She didn't want the rose. She wanted to see if you'd bleed picking it. You thought it was affection she sought, but it was submission. Not yours. Not entirely. Just enough to watch the fracture form. One breath too soft. One glance too open. And her eyes flickered with the thrill of tiny victories. The curve of her smile wasn't love. It was strategy. You remember now, not in words, but in instincts. The pull to protect her, the silence you swallowed, the moment she cried, and it wasn't sorrow, but theater. You bent not to hold her, but to worship a wound that never needed healing. She doesn't chase, she lures, she waits. Not because she is weak, but because the net is invisible only when it doesn't move, and you still thinking you were the hunter. But tell me, why do your scars resemble fingerprints if this whisper already knows you let it echo? Like the video. Leave your shadow in the comments. Subscribe and stay near the silence. She waits in stillness, but it is not peace. It is war disguised as patience. The kind of war where she never draws a blade, only hands you one and watches where you cut yourself. You thought she wanted closeness. She only wanted proximity enough to read the tremor in your voice, the way your breath changed when she stepped towards silence, and you mistook silence for softness. But silence is the sharpest sound. It's how she listened, to the hesitation behind your compliments, to the guilt baked into your apologies, to the way you told stories, always trying to prove you were not like the others. She didn't want the proof. She wanted the effort, because effort is the scent of someone who believes they can win, and winners are always the easiest to unmake. You didn't see it, but she was already testing you from the beginning, not with games, but with absence. One missed text, 1 hour of delay, and you leaned in not because you missed her, but because something inside you panicked at the sudden quiet. She was never addicted to your presence. She was addicted to the echo of control when you feared her absence. You offered her safety, but safety makes her restless. She does not trust comfort, she studies it like a trap. She studies you like a prediction, because it's not love she's tracing, it's weakness. She remembers who made her kneel. She remembers who first looked away when she cried. And ever since, she has studied eyes. She knows now that love is not something given, it is something extracted, slowly, elegantly, without a blade. And the one who needs less always rules. That is why she never says "I miss you" first. That is why she listens more than she speaks. That is why she never explains what hurt her, only leaves you to imagine it. Imagination does more damage than memory. And you walked straight into the myth that if you were kind, she would soften, that if you were consistent, she would open. But she isn't looking for your softness. She is watching what it costs you. Do you flinch when she pulls away? Do you bend when she is cold? Do you chase the shadow of her warmth like a man possessed by the echo of spring? She isn't cruel. Cruelty requires too much care. She is exact. Cold is not the opposite of warmth. It is the proof that warmth once mattered. Every step back is calculated. Every fine hides a chessboard. And the queen doesn't need to move often. She only needs you to believe that every square might be a trap. You thought this was about her emotions. It was never about emotion. It was about leverage. She learned young that affection is not currency, it is bait. And you still think you're free. But tell me, when was the last time you said no, and she didn't vanish behind a mask of disappointment? When was the last time you made a demand, and she didn't meet it with silence so loud you apologize for breathing? This is not a woman. This is the return of something older than trust. The feminine mask of strategy that predates speech before words. There were gestures before love. There was leverage. She doesn't want your love. She wants your center, and she will take it without touching you. It begins with the questions. the subtle tests. Would you still love me if I disappeared? Why do you look at other women like that? Do you think I'm enough? But these are not questions, they are signals. She's watching your answers like a king studies his food for poison, because whoever flinches first loses the frame. And once she has the frame, she does not argue anymore. She withholds, and silence is her signature. She doesn't yell, she waits, because in the wait, you become the one who apologizes. And she knows this: the man who apologizes without clarity is already submitting. You will offer her comfort, and she will use it to measure how much you fear her absence. You will offer her truth, and she will weigh the tremble in your voice more than the words themselves. What you call falling in love, she calls mapping the fault lines. There is no malice in this, only memory. She remembers a time when she trusted, and trust nearly killed her. Now, love is not safe. Love is a weapon she must control or be destroyed by. That's why she doesn't ask you to stay. She only gives you glimpses. And when you stay longer than expected, she begins to doubt you. Not because you did something wrong, but because she no longer trusts anything she didn't have to chase. You thought your loyalty would earn you devotion, but she isn't devoted to comfort. She's addicted to uncertainty, because the uncertain man is a mirror, and the mirror doesn't blink. You want to save her, but she doesn't want saving. She wants to see if your hands bleed when you try. Every tear she sheds, she watches how you hold it. Do you panic? Do you become the fixer? Do you promise her a world with no storms? Then you are no longer a man. You are a refuge. And she doesn't trust safe places. She tests them until they collapse, just to confirm what she already believes, that everything breaks if you press hard enough. And now you are pressed, bent, quiet, hoping to prove you're not like the others. But in trying not to be the villain, you've already become the pawn. Because this was never about love. This was about whether you would hand her the blade and then thank her for the wound. And you did. You still do. You say, she's just complicated. You say, she's been hurt before. But beneath your compassion is a desperation you cannot name, a need to be chosen, even if the choosing costs your spine. She sees it, she smells it, and she keeps you just close enough to hope. This isn't cruelty, this is nature. The lion doesn't hate the gazelle. It just needs to know it can chase. And she needs to know she could have you, fully, irrevocably, and still walk away untouched. That's why she stays just long enough. That's why she kisses like she's claiming territory. That's why her eyes flicker when you hesitate. She never wanted love. She wanted to see if you would break first, and you did. Now smile, and tell her you understand, because somewhere inside, you do. She sits where you once imagined yourself standing, not with ceremony, not even with posture, but with the kind of quiet that makes men hallucinate their own worth. You didn't notice it at first. You thought the silence between her replies was circumstantial, a matter of time zones or moods or distractions. But time does not delay without meaning when power is at stake. And with her, time is a mirror. She disappears, and your reflection fractures. She has no need to shout, no need to demand. Her crown is forged from the pauses she doesn't explain, the meanings she doesn't clarify. While you speak, she listens not to understand, but to calibrate. Her silence is the throne, and every word you say while waiting for her return is another stone laid at her feet. You call it love, but love does not kneel before ghosts. You are still there, trying to decode her vanishing. You still craft explanations on her behalf. She's busy, she's stressed, she's wounded, but deep inside, you know this. Her absence is not an accident. It is architecture. She has built you a palace of longing and then vanished from its halls. You walk alone through its corridors, whispering your devotion to the shadows she left behind. And this is how she reigns. Because a woman who withholds does not need to seduce, she only needs to suggest. A hint of vulnerability, a half-shared dream, a moment of eye contact held too long. These are not promises, they are permissions for you to imagine. And once you begin to imagine, she no longer needs to move. You will walk every step on your own, believing it is progress, when, in truth, it is orbit. You orbit the center she has emptied. You offer gestures, long messages, voice notes, gifts, all in the hope of reviving her warmth. But warmth is never what she offers outright. She lets you feel its ghost, lets you wonder if you did something wrong to lose it. She lets you believe that maybe, if you're more honest, more masculine, more romantic, it might return. And you become devout, worshipping not her presence, but the vacuum of it. She is not cruel. Cruelty is too active. She is disciplined. Her absence is rehearsed. She knows that the less she gives, the more you reach. Not because you are weak, but because you are patterned. Men who long for love become their own leash. You pull yourself tighter. You tell yourself this is normal, that relationships ebb and flow, that mystery is attractive. But there is no mystery here, only distance shaped into a mirror. You chase, not her, but the version of yourself you once felt in her gaze. That man, briefly crowned, that man, momentarily chosen. You want him back, but he exists only in the frame she held for a second before withdrawing it like breath before a scream. And still you stay, because it is not the woman you chase, it is the repair of something she never broke, but simply revealed. You are addicted to the hope of being worthy enough to summon her fully. You think that if you stay steady, if you don't react, if you remain calm and unfazed, she will return with a crown of gratitude. She never returns, because the point is not your patience. The point is your transformation. The man you were confident, indifferent, self-directed has already decayed beneath the silence. You call it love, but it is dependence. You are not loving her. You are begging the absence to forgive you. And this is her empire, not a throne made of gold, a throne made of ghost limbs of texts unsent, of phone calls never made, of nights when her silence hummed louder than any music. Her absence becomes sacred. You build temples from it. You recite your worth into the void, hoping that echoes mean presence. They don't. They mean you are alone. But you still believe, because somewhere deep inside you, the child remembers the mother who turned away. And that same child still believes that if he had smiled better, spoken softer, cried louder, she would have stayed. You never chased her. You chased her absence. It was never love you tried to win. It was gravity. And now, here you are again, a man at the edge of himself, writing messages in your mind you never send, rehearsing forgiveness for sins you never committed, calling her complex, sensitive, unhealed. You do not describe her, you defend her. And what you are defending is your own collapse. You want to believe she needs space, but she doesn't need space. She needs distance to breathe in her reflection. Power tastes purer when it's not begged for. She lets you come closer only to measure how far you'll crawl. The less she responds, the louder you plead. And this becomes her symphony, a melody where your voice becomes background to her silence. She leaves out the middle of the story, always. You only get the beginning, the spark, the closeness, the sudden intimacy. Then, the desert. You never hear the reason. You never get the ending. And so, You write it yourself. You become the author of your own rejection. And this is her deepest mastery. She doesn't break you. She lets you break yourself in her name. And you do it gladly. You confuse loyalty with masochism. You think devotion means staying in the fire without asking why it burns. But she does not admire your loyalty. She studies it. And she wonders how much you'll pay for a touch she no longer needs to give. She used to offer softness. She used to smile when she needed to, but now she knows she doesn't have to. Power doesn't seduce. It waits. She waits. And you interpret. Every silence becomes a test. Every short reply becomes a punishment. Every delay becomes a riddle you must solve. You think if you solve it, she will return, but she never left. She simply removed her warmth and let the cold do the work. The cold is the message. The cold is the mirror. And you keep staring, hoping your reflection will say something different. But it won't. You have become her favorite canvas, the man who paints himself in devotion with no brush in hand. And still, you do not leave, because her absence doesn't feel like rejection. It feels like a maze, and men love mazes. They believe that if they suffer long enough, they will emerge wiser, stronger, chosen. But this maze has no center. Only a woman who realized that to rule a man, she need not fight him. She only needs to withhold the last piece of his reflection, the piece that convinces him he is not enough. And if he believes that long enough, he will build his own chains and thank her for not wearing the key. There was a moment when she looked at you, and the world bent inward. It was not warmth. It was not even interest. It was something rarer, more lethal attention sharpened like a knife, held just behind the smile. You mistook it for intimacy, but intimacy does not scan for weakness while it embraces. That moment, that smile, that flash in her eyes, it was not her letting you in. It was her marking the spot, where you would fall. You thought she was melting, she was measuring. That tilt of the head, that delayed laugh, that brush of her hand over yours, none of it spontaneous. Affection is not how she bonds. It is how she paces the room before the explosion. A lit match, not yet dropped. And you, too dazed to smell the smoke, mistook the warmth for safety. But the countdown had already begun. You never heard the ticking, because it was beneath your heartbeat. You thought you were building something, but what you were building was your own illusion. She fed it delicately, a compliment here, a kiss there, silence that hinted at mystery, not distance. Every gesture was exact, not to deceive, but to control. Because if she gave too much, you'd stop reaching, and a man who stops reaching cannot be ruled. So she kept you on the edge of the cliff close enough to believe in flight, far enough that you never noticed your wings were borrowed. She doesn't need to lie. She only needs to let you imagine. She lets you fill in the gaps with your own longing, and longing, unchecked, becomes belief. That belief is what you fell in love with, not her. You were in love with the man you became when she looked at you like that. And when she stopped looking, you didn't fall out of love. You fell out of yourself. This is how she wins. By making you believe it was your idea. The fall never comes with a scream. It comes with a smile. The same smile she wore when she told you, "I've never felt like this before." The same smile she gave when she whispered, "You're different." But difference, in her mouth, is not a gift. It is a forecast, a signal that you've stepped into the narrative but not the role you think. You are not the lover, you are the lesson. She's done this before, not often, only when it matters, because power is not proven by frequency, it is proven by precision. She doesn't destroy every man. She selects the ones who shine a little too brightly, the ones who think they understand women, the ones who believe their love can fix what was never broken. She never wanted fixing. She wanted theater, and you became the stagehand who mistook himself for the playwright. You kept handing her scripts, your dreams, your plans, your softest memories, and watched her smile as she took them. But she never read them. She only watched how much of yourself you'd offer for free. And when the final scene arrived, when the silence came back, not as an absence but as a verdict, you stood there, script in hand, and she was already gone. This is not heartbreak. This is strategy. You were not chosen because you were safe. You were chosen because you were proud, because something in you still believed that love is earned by goodness. She saw that. She saw the need to be enough, and she wrapped her silence around it like silk. Every touch, every word, every sigh, a thread in the web. And when you were finally tangled, she did nothing. She never cuts. She simply stops weaving, and the silence collapses. You say she ghosted you. No, ghosting is an accident. What she did was ritual. She pulled back not to disappear, but to watch, to observe what form your collapse would take. Would you beg? Would you rage? Would you confess things no man should confess? To silence. She watched, not out of malice, but out of study, the way a poet watches a candle go out, the way a wolf listens to the final breath of its prey, not in cruelty, but to learn how it breaks. She is not cold, she is ancient. She carries in her gaze the memory of every man who promised her safety and delivered chains. So now, she does not love, she selects. She places her affection like a chalice in the center of a test. And you, thinking it holy, drank without reading the inscription. You forgot the old rules. Never trust a smile that asks nothing of you. Never trust warmth that vanishes in moonlight. Never trust the moment you feel most seen, because that is the moment she's already leaving. And now you're here, trying to make sense of the silence. You replay every word, every glance. Every night you held her like a secret you thought you'd finally earned. But secrets are not earned. They are planted. And you were always the soil, fertile, naive, grateful. You think she feels nothing. You think she moved on. But you're wrong. She doesn't move on. She archives. She remembers every tremble in your voice, every apology you whispered before she even accused. She remembers your silence when she raised her voice. She remembers your softness not as beauty, but as leverage. And she will come back, one day, not to stay, but to see if the throne still stands. She will say she was lost, that she wasn't ready, that she needed space. But what she needed was to see you bend one more time, just a little, just enough. Not to hurt you, but to remind herself that she still can. That is the final smile, the one that looks like closure, but opens the wound anew. The one that makes you believe the fall is over, when really, it has just changed direction. Down becomes sideways, pain becomes nostalgia, and you find yourself saying her name in empty rooms, not because you miss her, but because she once taught you how to vanish. And now, you use it on yourself. You disappear a little more each day from your purpose, from your edge, from your pride. You think she broke you, but she didn't. She just stopped pretending you were whole. And in that moment, when the mirror cracked, you smiled too, because some part of you always knew. Affection was never the promise. It was the warning. And now, you carry her smile inside your mouth as if it were your own. There is a room in your mind you no longer enter, A chair still warm. A name you won't say aloud. In the corner, a smile floats untethered, still glowing. You try to remember what came before it, but the memory has teeth and silence. A door remains ajar. No footsteps, no shadow, just the sense that if you turned fast enough, you'd catch her watching. But you never do. You only hear it, that final sentence she never said, curled behind your ribs. I never needed to love you. Only to see if you'd forget yourself trying. And maybe you did. Maybe you still are. Let the mirror stay cracked. Let the throne remain empty. And if this echo still knows your name, leave it below. Like the video. Leave your ghost in the comments. Subscribe. And don't come back the same.